Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jesse Berger, chairman of Harnett County's GOP. I was born in Istanbul, Turkey, moved to New England when I was 12, joined the Navy at 17, transferred to the Army at 21, did 2 combat deployments with the 82nd and with USASOC before becoming medically retired. Now I'm a father and a business owner, and as I look around to the future that is being left for my children does not have the same freedom and opportunities that I have enjoyed. My brothers still in uniform are fighting based on orders from incompetent leaders. The love for my country runs through my veins, and seeing what's happening is unacceptable. So how do we change our trajectory? How do we inspire our next generations? Well, it begins with getting smart on what the role of our officials should be. Once we've learned what the job is supposed to be, we must then ensure that we elect the people that can accomplish the tasks. This is what we will be exploring with our candidate in this interview. So without further ado, let me welcome NC House District 6 candidate Murry Simpkins. Murry, first of all, thank you for stepping up to be a leader in these times. I'm reminded of Thomas Jefferson in some of his founding writings. He wrote that he felt one of the greatest threats to our new government would be the day when the best qualified people refuse to undertake the tedious, arduous, and sometimes unpleasant task of filling important public offices. So once again, thank you for joining us on this call, and look forward to introducing you to Harnett County and everyone else watching. So starting off, I'd like to just give you an opportunity to introduce yourself, and then we'll get started with some questions.
Thanks, Jesse. I appreciate it. I'm Murry Simpkins, and like you said, running for House District 6 as a representative. A lot of people, well, we'll just stay with that part. My history is kind of long and vast. I was in the Air Force active duty for about 10 years. I was security forces, canine handler, and then a canine trainer for the military. I got a little tired of traveling quite a bit, so I went into the National Guard, spent about 15 years in the National Guard. I ended up with a total of 24 years total service. I was activated during multiple times, Kobar Towers, D-Storm 1, as we called it back then, and of course, Operation Iraqi Freedom, and a couple other ones that I don't remember what the patches said. I retired in 2003 from the Air Force, and when I went into the National Guard, I joined the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. I worked my way through there for 26 years. I retired from the Sheriff's Department in 2014 and moved out here to North Carolina, where my lovely wife, Heather, is from. We lived in the same house now for about almost 8.5 years. I'm active in a lot of things. I've been with Buddy Backpack for about 7 years. It's a nonprofit group that provides weekend lunches to children who are food deprived. I'm the president of Spout Springs Fire Board. I've been so for about 1.5 years. I've been with Spout Springs for almost 6 years. And I stay active in my church and community. So that pretty much wraps me up in a nutshell, except to say I've got 4 kids, 1 left at home. She'll be graduating this year and going to college.
Awesome. Well, it's a pleasure having you with us today, and look forward to hearing some of your thoughts about what you're going to do if you're elected. So, all right. Okay. So Murry, one of the first questions that I have is, because we have a party with a vast amount of experience in the political world. Some people are completely new. Some people have been in for a while. If we could just kind of start baby steps, lay down the foundations of what a House representative's job even is. What are the rules for it? Kind of walk us through from a 4th grade level up to, more in detail.
Well, thanks, Jesse. It's not really complicated what a House representative does in the state of North Carolina. It follows the preamble of our Constitution, also follows the second notation in the Constitution, that the job of politicians in general, but more so it's important with representatives because you're representing a group of people that have placed you into a position to work for them. So the jobs are to work for those people, first and foremost, openly and honestly. Second, it's to pass bills and create bills and amend bills. It's also set up to make new laws, adjust the laws, and one of the other things is it can begin impeachment if so desired proceedings.
So, based on that job description, what would you say are the right and left limits of a House representative in terms of, obviously we understand that our system is designed where there's local government, there's municipalities, and things kind of expand out. So what would be specifically the left and right limits of a representative as opposed to, let's say, a county commissioner?
Well, county commissioners are essentially, they're the bankers for the county. The House will issue a budget and the county commissioners receive the budget. And then it's the commissioners' jobs to decide where that budget for the county goes. So they make up the whole basis of how the county evolves out of the budget, allocating money for this school, that, this, wherever they're going to put it. Another part of that, where the state can help out, is there's an Appropriations Act passed in the state of North Carolina. The federal government calls it the Appropriations Bill. In North Carolina, we call it the Appropriations Act. That's a 625, 650-page document. I've managed to scan the first half of it, and I'll try and digest the rest as I go along. But in that first half, I found about 4 different areas specifically addressing counties with issues in schools. Most of that portrays to poor counties. So the biggest question I could see in going up there and researching this more is, are we still considered a poor county based upon our growth as far as that budget passing at that specific time and that grant being implicated or implemented prior to the budget? So a lot of things, as you know, being in the military, there's end games, and there's certain criteria you have to meet during these end game timeframes. So you have the luxury of somebody passes a bill, and even though you might not be considered an extremely poor county now, when the bill was passed, you were. So if there's no exception to that, then that would probably make us somewhat, a contender for receiving those kind of funds. And they're strictly for schools. That's what I was looking for when I was looking into the appropriations bill, was how could we possibly get money for schools? Because that's extremely important to a vast number of people throughout the county. When I'm talking about representing District 6, that's 3/4 of Harnett County. So everyone has to be treated equal in what we do as representatives for the people that we work for. So I'm not just saying, okay, this particular district or this school area or this school area. It's money that could be shared amongst all the schools.
So as it comes to kind of separating out the right and left limits, if you're coming up with budgets or you're coming up with legislation for schools, for example, where is the crossover between I am working to try and get funding for my county or for my district and the people that I represent versus I'm going to now sign off on a bill that, let's say, introduces CRT or SEL into the curriculum? How does that process happen?
Very simple. No, that would never happen to me. I would never, ever vote for either one of those. Even if the party sat down and said, this is a good thing, and I would be shocked if they did, I would have to say, no, in Harnett County, we do not support that.
So on a more general,
those types of bills
that
are going to detract from that. So, and generally speaking, for your county, you're working for your people. So say, for instance, and I believe this to be true, so the parents could come and say, we want to implement the ability for us to be able to have a say in our education for our children. And I would support that and try and push it forward. However, if the school board said, we're not going to do it, then I can't interfere with the school board. The school board is its own entity, just the same way as the county commissioners are their own entity. They have their own realm of overseeing power, if you want to call it that, but the responsibility to address the issues that they feel important. So if it came to that CRT, then I would vote no, and I would do everything to support the people that said no. And I'm absolutely 100% positive that we would never enact it through our school board because, well, they're responsible people. So that's the far right and the left of it. I can assist, I can help out, but I can't direct either the commissioners or the school board to do whatever I want them to do. I'm representing the people, just the same way they're representing the people.
So I'd like to tie that in with leadership styles. Um, I guess the question becomes, it seems as though there's a job, and the job is supposed to be to take care of the people that you're representing on a kind of broad level. And it seems as though many politicians take that to go so broad that it includes, I'm going to try and tell you how to live your life now because this is the right way to do it. So when something like SEL or CRT is even coming up, I guess the question is not those specific issues, but rather the idea that we're going to implement some type of social structure or change. How does what is your leadership style in terms of making sure that there are clean lines and you are expressing to the people, these are the things that I believe my job requires me to pay attention to, and these are things that are outside of that scope. How does that tie into your leadership style?
Well, I plan on having town halls, town meetings, and continuing to attend precincts to talk to people. As a representative, I'm the representative for the people. So I try and keep my opinion out of it. I do have an opinion, obviously, we all do. And some of them I'm pretty strong about. But that doesn't mean that my way is, going to be the only way. You have to be able to work with people, and you have to be able to listen to people. And sometimes people say things that you don't agree with, but you can't just push them aside because their opinion is different. Because I'm a big believer that if you're in a room with 7 people and everyone's voting the same way all the time, there's a problem in that room. There's a vacuum. You've got to have other ideas that come in and make sense to everybody. And then you take those ideas and maybe they have to change a little bit to be acceptable to other people, but they don't lose their core value. And then other people have to change theirs. And so you encourage that type of interaction because life doesn't have a one fit thing. Leadership doesn't have a one fit thing. You can be the best general in the world like Schwarzkopf was, and I love him dearly. But at the same time, he had his people below him that were advising him, and he listened to them. And that brought up morale with the troops, and it also helped him succeed in what he was trying to do at the time. Different story, but the same guideline. You want to be a leader, and you want people to know that you're there to lead them. But at the same time, it's more important that you support them.
Well, that makes a lot of sense to me, and I appreciate your explanation of it. I'd like to transition slightly into a different topic now, which is
Sure.
this next section here. We'll spend about 20 minutes talking about the 3 biggest issues facing our district and then facing our state. And really what I'm hoping to be able to identify during this portion is what those lines are. Because it seems as though the lanes and the lines of what people are supposed to do is very blurred. And so that's one of the things I'm really curious on seeing how you view this and your instruction to the people basically of where you see those lines being and what you see your responsibilities being as such. So we could start off with 3 biggest issues facing our district and your proposed solutions to them.
Well, growth is a huge thing, and where the state can help is on the infrastructure part. It looks at how are you going to accommodate those homes. Now, there was an assessment that was passed by the House. It's going to die in the Senate. So there's not going to be that, but we could try and revisit that and try and do it again. But and I certainly would be on that bill, if not trying to sponsor it, by myself. But people have to understand the House and the Senate is just like the House and the Senate up in Washington, D.C., separate entities. So both have to buy off on those things. But that being said, education, well, we'll stay with infrastructure for a few minutes, because with growth, you have to have the infrastructure in order to manage that growth. If we put in these, for lack of a better word, Raleigh homes that are going for well over 300,000, we now have a tax base that is increasing. So we would expect that tax base would help support that. But with the tax rate that we have in Harnett County, we don't have the money that one house pays in property taxes to put one child into school for the entire year. So if you have 2 children, you probably have enough money for half a kid that's of your tax money going into schools. So we have to look at that. Believe it or not, that is also in the in the budget for last year and addresses some of those issues. That's how the state can help out. But there's also a quandary in there. There's a current lawsuit that's going through, or a law case going through. It's not a suit, it's a law case going through on mythology and how the schools receive their. So with the school system, the state can help. And it did in this last budget immensely. I think it's 10.9 billion next year for K1 through 12, or kindergarten through 12. But how it gets distributed in the state, some people would say it's unfair. There's two methods to use it to, and it's about a 50-50 split on which method one group wants to use and which one wants to use. We're still under the old system, and a lot of people feel that that's inadequate because it doesn't really address the needs of all the school districts in a fair way, in their opinion. Now, there are those that argue, and I would somewhat support this, that maybe the state doesn't really need to be in that business. If the schools are supposed to be in charge of the schools and the school districts are supposed to be in charge of the school districts, then the state should be the one administering a budget per se, but the people deciding where that budget would go would come from the education world. I think when you have the state passing laws about how education is done and what they're supposed to do, it gives other people an out to take responsibility for either inaction or too much action. So you have right now, you have the school board that's going to be accountable for something, the administrator of the budget, which is an education person, a Republican under the current administration. And then you have the state house as well as the state Senate involved in that. So as you know, once you add a whole bunch of people with a lot of different opinions on where everything's going to go, and everyone's from a different frame of reference, you end up with just a cluster that everybody throws their hands up and says, it's not my fault. I'm not for that type of government. I'm for small government. So if my job is to help with the budget, I want to help with the budget. I don't want to manage that budget. Tell me what you need as a school board, school district in Harnett County. Tell me where your pitfalls are. And that's what I should be discussing with the people when they say, okay, we need this money, we need this. Well, this is what we need. And then if we're still involved, we should be involved in the budget. That's part of our job. We create a budget for the state, and hopefully the governor passes it. If we're creating that budget, then do we need to be the ones that administer the distribution? And I would say no. We're out of it at that point. But that doesn't mean that we still can't look for money to help the schools, help the teachers, help the children. I mean, there's other aspects to schools. And part of those aspects involve family problems at home, a parent being deployed, parent being absent, parents who are on drugs, opioids, which is destructive to the whole family. There are a lot of issues in school that we don't look at. So I think we need to get a grip on that. And Harnett County suffers tremendously.
And I'd like to interject real quick. Something that I know that we've discussed is some of your background coming from LA. So with your background, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that you've experienced this firsthand, watching a county, watching an area really expand and grow. So what kind of lessons learned are you bringing with you into our district? And what are some real, warning signs that you're seeing based on the current trajectory that we're taking?
I think what we suffer from here more than, say, Southern California or a number of states is counties aren't looked at the same as an incorporated city. So there has to be a mechanism there to where we either start incorporating more of the unincorporated areas, which is extremely expensive. We've had this conversation. Or the state recognizes townships and starts giving them the same sort of financial funding that a city would give. So for instance, Dunn, we'll just take Dunn just off the top of my head. It's a town, it's a city, it's incorporated. So they can get money for the law enforcement easier and quicker from what I've experienced. Now, somebody might see this and say, Murray, you're talking out your butt. But then again, that's my observation at this point. So I want to be able specifically to get our area, the western portion, the same type of money that comes down from the state for our police departments, for our fire departments. And just so you understand, I'm the president of South Springs. I mentioned that before. It's a 503C. So the county controls our budget. And we're very appreciative of the recent changes in the budget. And it's helped us tremendously. But our firefighters don't get a state retirement. Our firefighters, once they leave, they're done. And it's not just South Springs. Every fire department in unincorporated areas, Harnett County, is the same. So that's something I could look at and say, how do we get them that state retirement? Do we have the ability to help provide that? Or is that something that's written in stone and we couldn't change it if we tried? So try and get some of that funding to move back down into Harnett County, more so than what we get. Now, I know in the past we've been told, well, you need to incorporate. Well, that's very expensive. And it's something I've told you that, you know, if I'm elected to the House, I would work as much as I possibly could to help out with that, if that's what the people chose in this area. But then, you know, you're setting up your own government. It's a very, very expensive process, especially based on the population that we have between Anderson Creek, Carolina Lakes, Johnsonville, and this whole area here that's just blowing up. So, but there has to be a way that they can get some of the funding, some of the money that comes down to help them out, so that they're not always asking for help, that they're given their due, if you will, and they can proceed as needed. So that's one of the areas of issues and concerns that I have, is the growth and how the money's distributed.
Right. And of course, we touched on the schools as well. All of that said, you know, in terms of the local area, if you could narrow down maybe, let's say, one or two things in the schools, maybe top one issue in the schools that you believe needs to be addressed as of right now.
So the schools are like 10 schools behind. And that's a guess, but it's a pretty good guess. So if we're 10 schools behind now, and we're growing like we're growing, and people are coming like they're going to come and continue, and when you open the paper, another 900 homes is being built. For every 900 homes, that's going to be 2 kids per house, 1,800 kids. So if we don't have a place to put them, how long are those people going to stay in Harnett County? Or what's the likelihood that they'll do their daycare center near their work in Raleigh or wherever they're working outside of our county? And so we're not getting the money, we're not getting the people, we're not getting the parents. Eventually they're going to move back. So there's got to be a mechanism in there where we can say, okay, look, there's 900 homes coming in here. We need rooms for 1,800 kids, minimum. And that's another thing I don't understand. They always say you can only build to the need you currently have. Well, somebody with some common sense would know that the need that we currently have today is going to be significantly different in 6 months, more different in a year, because it takes that time for those homes to be built. So those are the areas I want to look at, because they are problems. They're not only problems here, but Mecklenburg County is going through the same thing, believe it or not. I've been there and I've never really seen a whole lot of openness, but they are the fastest growing county currently in North Carolina. So they're also going to come into those infrastructures and school problems, but I think they're better prepared because they're all incorporated, so their taxes just go up.
Well, I think that's a great segue into kind of the second portion of this, which is getting into how our district ties into the state on a larger level, because obviously there's a symbiotic relationship that we all have. So, and, you know, mentioning Mecklenburg and the growth that they're experiencing over there and how it correlates with us, that's kind of the next section I wanted us to get into. So what other areas or what other items do you believe that statewide are having an impact on us here locally? And maybe if you could even expand into what you think that we could do as our district to help maybe start leading the fight in some efforts instead of being reactive.
Well, I think the board just recently made a $24 million investment in economic development plan that's going to be shared by government and private sector. I think that was like a week ago or 2 weeks ago, which is a good idea. It's a great idea, but it has to be productive. And I think they're on track for that. So having that as a buffer in a recruiting zone, we're going to benefit from the new car manufacturing company that's going up in Chatham County. The water is actually being supplied mostly by Sanford. So that's going to bring employment into Sanford and into Chatham County and our area as well, Because as you know, if you live closer to where that factory is going to be built, homes will be more congested. We still have some wide open areas and people don't mind 30 to 40-minute drives to work. And our roads really aren't crowded right now for commuters. For the residentials and going to schools and stuff like that, they are. But going up Highway 1, 421, not quite nearly as bad, so it's convenient to commute. But we need to capitalize on that by offering something in here that keeps them here. Do we need 12 Hardys in 3 blocks? I don't think so. But they're going up and they're selling. I would like us to go after more sit-down restaurants, more family-type restaurants, and family locations. Businesses, I would like to see businesses that come in here that pay prevailing wages, IT businesses, technology businesses, businesses that look at infrastructure specifically, law firms that are going to be adjudicating cases that increase because of the growth that we have. But we need to have businesses. We have a lot of businesses that are fantastic. Don't get me wrong. We have a lot of stores to go shopping at now, and they're coming more and more, and people are thinking about putting more and more in. But we also need to support that with businesses that pay prevailing wages that will keep people here. So without that, we're pretty much going to remain stagnant where we're at. And the battle between that, it's not really a battle. The cultural change from that, from the farming age of what we are culturally, kind of clashes in there. And that has to be managed well, because we don't want to lose our culture. But we can't stop farmers from selling their land, and most of them sell their land because their kids don't want to farm. So it's their land, they have a right to sell it. I support that. But if there's a way that we could...
Yeah, and let me just ask real quick. So what is your stance on, I guess I've noticed that there's 2 different methodologies. There's 2 kind of predominant methodologies for how to grow a place out. One is we got to bring in the companies that have these high paying jobs and these wages. The other is we need to create the conditions so that our people can produce those jobs and create that stuff and start exporting what we have. So which side of the fence of that, I guess, are you on? And obviously I don't believe that there's necessarily a right or wrong answer. It's just, based on the individual person's approach. But I'm curious as to what your thoughts are as to bringing jobs in, i.e. we try to get other corporations to come here versus we create an environment that allows the talent that we already have within our district to expand out.
Well, I believe that the talent that we have should expand. The talent that we have really doesn't have the ability to establish that structured, business, if you will, brick and mortar. But then again, you ask the question, do we need it nowadays? Because a lot of people are doing the remote. So there's a valid thing there. It's like, well, I'm doing IT from home and I'm making good money. Why do I need a brick and mortar? Well, that makes sense. And there's not really any argument we can have to that. But what we can do to get us involved is with the school systems, we can start in these programs where they have Future Farmers of America. We can have IT classes, and for the senior year after they graduate, or the junior year, once they complete the course requirements, for the summer, we try and develop an internship program for these kids to go to work for these companies that are starting to come in. It serves 2 purposes. One, it allows that company to see the type of talent that we have here in Harnett County. 2, it reinforces the kid's desire to do the job that he thinks he or she is wanting to do. And 3, it creates a network between our schools, the children, and the businesses. So once you have that, then you have the businesses are comfortable knowing that the people coming out of this county are prepared for these positions. And you can apply it to farming so that the farmers don't have to sell the land because the kids don't. Obviously, they're not going to sell it to a kid, a young adult, I should say. But it gives the farmer time to mentor that person and maybe another person. And then maybe he can save that farm, the family farm, for a little longer while the younger group grow into it. Same in IT business. That most IT people, you can take a class and they say you're certified, but it doesn't really train you on all the aspects of being an IT person. How do you deal with people that always call you every day and say that they don't know how to log on? little innuendos and stuff that are annoying, but it's all part of the job. With an internship, you get to see the whole structure line. You're not in the classroom. It's not cut and dry. It's not from a book that's black and white. It's not a keyboard that all of you are, typing in the same information at the same time. You go to a different company that might have a different methodology or a different software system or a different technical security issue. But you're learning the business side, how to deal with customers, how to deal maybe with sales, how to deal with repairing stuff. So it's a very symbiotic joint thing where you take what now is somebody that's usually thought of outside of our county as a person that comes from a poor county, really doesn't have a great education, to no, we are smart, you just never looked at us.
Well, I like that change of mentality, and I hope that we can definitely accomplish that. So
I do too.
With that said, of course, we're running low on time here. So where can people get a hold of you? How can they find your information? How can they reach out and talk with you if they wanted to?
Well, we got the Facebook site. It's easy to find, Simpkins for NC House. We have a website, simpkinsfornchouse.com. And I have my phone number. You can just reach me at that. That's 919-842-1866. That's my actual cell phone. I do answer.
Awesome. Well, Murry, I appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing how the primary plays out and working with you in the future.
Oh, yeah. Well, we're on that subject before we go. Very important you vote in the primary, people. There's like 10 people running for U.S. Senate and the U.S. House. And then there's local people running. So get out to the primary, vote in the primary, vote for your person, and hopefully it will allow them and encourage them to stay.
Awesome. Well, thanks very much, Murry. I really appreciate your time.